Good morning. My name is Emily Cahill, and I'm the Executive Director of the Peoria Park District. On behalf of our staff and elected Board of Trustees, I am honored to welcome Governor Pritzker to our historic Proctor Recreation Center. I'd like to thank Representative Jahan Gordon Booth, Senator Sims, Senator Peters, Representative Slaughter, Senator Kaler, and all other dignitaries, including our trustees, President Robert Johnson and Trustee Joyce Harrent, for joining us today to celebrate his visit. The oldest park district in the state of Illinois, the Peoria Park District is a public steward of nearly 9,000 acres of park and open space and provides recreation and wellness opportunities to support our community across multiple recreation centers. None of that sounds particularly out of the ordinary, but we are here today to express our gratitude and celebrate a part of our work that is extraordinary. Through the work of dedicated staffers like Carl Cannon, who will speak later today in today's program, and Janelle McLeod, the general manager of the facility that we stand in here today, and others, the Peoria Park District works daily to prevent violence by engaging our youth and families in positive activity and skill building that encourages a safe and nonviolent lifestyle. Thanks to the generous advocacy and support of Leader Jahan Gordon Booth and the expert oversight of the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority, our district has been able to provide innovative responses to our youth violence-free activities in ways that have engaged and encouraged during times that have challenged the very core of what our park district does. With their help, the Peoria Park District has been able to provide the following: a series of outdoor movies in the park that safely engaged nearly 1,000 Peorians over the course of the summer when we couldn't hold indoor events. Virtual hip-hop dance classes that kept youth active and moving while our recreation centers were closed. Focused educational and behavioral support for dozens of our most at-risk students as they navigated the transition to virtual learning. Over 300 hours of creative and out-of-school programming that allows for safe social distancing and encourages healthy, violence-free lifestyles. Soft skills, job training, and employment for returning citizens when opportunities for these men and women in our community have long been too scarce. With the help of strong advocates like Governor Pritzker, Representative Gordon Booth, and others, the Peoria Park District has been able to do some pretty amazing things, and we are sincerely grateful for their generous support. On behalf of the children and families that we serve, I am honored to say thank you to Governor Pritzker and invite him to the podium today to speak with you. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. Thanks to Emily Cahill, of course, and to the Peoria Park District for hosting us today and for all the amazing programming that you make possible for people here across Peoria and really the entire region. I want to also express my pride in being here with Leader Jahan Gordon Booth, who is truly a leader in so many ways. And Leader Dave Kaler from the State Senate, Senators L.G. Sims and Robert Peters, and Representative Justin Slaughter. I called you Jim. Where are you? Justin, they're all my friends. My apologies. Representative Justin Slaughter. And of course, the great Carl Cannon from the Elite Youth Outreach. I see many of your folks here today who have got their garb on to let everybody know who they work with. And I want to thank everyone in the General Assembly who voted for this terrific criminal justice reform legislation, now law, in the state of Illinois. Illinois has taken substantial steps forward toward dismantling the systemic racism that plagues our communities, our state, and our nation. By becoming a national leader in pursuing a more just, safe, and fair criminal justice system, Illinois raises the bar for what's possible, while also acknowledging that there is more work to do. Before this new law goes fully into effect, pretrial detention is far more about how poor you are than about how dangerous you are. This law reverses that. What's more, it was written with survivors and victims of crime as an important focus of reform, providing supports for survivors and streamlining the victims' compensation system so that more families can know peace. This new law was written with the input of law enforcement agencies. So it invests in the mental wellness of our law enforcement so that our communities are safer and our police are healthier. And it strengthens crisis intervention training so that those officers in need can get the help that they deserve. It's essential to note that this effort also reflects the input of many, many organizations, grassroots organizations, advocates, and activists, including the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus from the General Assembly, the ACLU of Illinois, the Coalition to End Money Bond, the Illinois Justice Project, the Alliance for Safety and Justice, Noble, the Network Advocating Against Domestic Violence, and the People's Lobby. I'm proud to bear witness to their efforts to build a legal system that actually delivers justice, protects families, and supports communities. Early on in my administration, I established the Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative, which Lieutenant Governor Stratton oversees, to centralize our criminal justice reform efforts. We've expunged 500,000 low-level cannabis arrest records, and we've pardoned over 20,000 more and awarded tens of millions of dollars to lift up communities harmed by the war on drugs. We've also reduced our state's prison population by about 25% since the beginning of the pandemic just 1 year ago. And today, I'm very proud to take another step forward in the march toward justice by announcing another $4 million expansion of career training opportunities for at-risk youth. Part of our broader... I think I should smile more broadly when I announce something like that. It is really part of our broader effort to invest more in all of our communities so that fewer people end up in the cycle of incarceration in the first place. Our Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity is now taking applications from organizations around the state interested in supporting this mission to give our young people a real opportunity to succeed. This is another action that I'm taking to drive toward a more just Illinois, one that actually reflects the fundamental goodness of our people in this state, where everyone can build a good life for themselves. This is part of our goal. We want everyone to build a good life for themselves and for their loved ones, for the people that they care about in their communities. And thanks to those standing with me today, we're one step closer to that Illinois today. With that, I'm proud to turn it over now to a person who really has laid the groundwork for this moment. She championing the Neighborhood Safety Act in 2017 and the Criminal Justice Best Practices Act of 2019, never giving up on building a better tomorrow for the people that she serves and for the entire state. She is a major voice for victims' rights. The ways in which she's made this transformative legislation possible are evident across the board, so much so that her colleagues named her recently Speaker Pro Tem of the House of Representatives. I want to introduce to you, and she really has earned this title, Leader Jahan Gordon Booth.
Good morning, P-Town. Good morning, P-Town. Good morning. It is so good to be here. I walked up those steps, as all of us did today, and I was brought back to some very fond memories, many that some of you may have in here today. You know, I used to spend some of my summer days at the old Proctor pool that used to be behind that wall over there. I used to roller skate in this gym. Anybody used to roller skate in here? Yeah, very familiar, very familiar. Feels good to be back. I would also say that it felt so good walking in here today. Not so much the pit bull that was running around on the street that I screamed when I saw it, but the fact that I knew that I was okay because I saw my brothers and my sisters walking around with their elite hats on, our game changers in this community. I know that they weren't gonna let me get attacked by that dog. And when I said, hey, can somebody get that dog? About 6 people quickly pulled together to secure the dog. So I just thought that it was funny to me. But here's the reality. A lot of people talk about reforms in an incredibly ambiguous way, but reforms are real. Reforms are so very real. The reason why we are standing here in a Peoria Park District facility with game changers to our left, to our right, to our front, in a facility that Mr. Robert Johnson, president of the Peoria Park District, has championed for so many years. A phenomenal CEO like Emily Cahill and an incredible leader like Carl Cannon bringing forth this transformative idea and program with the Game Changers. The reason why this is even a possibility, the reason why this money is available is because of the reduction in the Illinois Department of the 20% reduction we have seen in the Illinois Department of Corrections in the last 3.5 years. That reduction then freed up money, $16 million, in which I was absolutely honored to lead that negotiation on behalf of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, which allows us to have the over $800,000 appropriation for the Park District, for the Game Changers, for this violence prevention initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, this money is available because of a reform. I'm saying that because there has been a lot of conversation about the reform that my brothers, Chairman Sims and Chairman Slaughter, shepherded through the Illinois House and Senate last month. The reality is that there are some, even in this community, that would say that the reform that we passed makes Illinois, maybe even makes Peoria less safe. That's simply not true. Let me say that again. That is simply not true. They will tell you that survivors, that there are victims out there that are now going to be in danger, families that are concerned because of the fact that this reform has passed. And that too, ladies and gentlemen, is not true. Let me tell you something about being a survivor. My son, Derek Booth Jr., lost his life 3 blocks from here. 3 blocks. I could walk here in these heels and my feet hurt, okay? I could walk there from here. And I tell you that because my story, my family's story, is like so many families' story across this country. Families from communities like these that are the most harmed, they are the least served. And the fact of the matter of it is that victims' voices have been leveraged to create an industrialized prison system that does not make communities more safe. Those policies have actually made communities far less safe. So let me tell you something, this survivor's voice and so many other survivors' voices around this state, they stood up. And they said, not only are we gonna have reforms, but we're gonna end the cash bail system. We're gonna divert low-level drug crimes to substance abuse and treatment programs. They demanded a modernized sentencing laws and streamlining victims' compensation acts. I know far too much about that than I should, trust me. They demanded that we require more investments in police officer training and mental health. Survivors demanded that we expanded training opportunities for officers for wellness so that when they go into communities that they actually have the ability to protect communities because they are seeing far too much violence day in and day out. They too suffer from trauma in the very same way that I may suffer from trauma or that you may suffer from trauma. Survivors demanded that we eliminate prison gerrymandering so that when a family member or somebody from the community goes downstate and they spend a few months or a few years in that town and they come back to your community. We all talked about the census for the last year and how important it was that we all got counted. Survivors demanded that we want those resources back in our own communities so that we're counting bodies where they actually reside. That's what they demanded. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, we will not allow the narrative that reform means that communities are less safe. That is far from the truth. Reform means that we have the opportunity to build back better communities, to build stronger communities. We have the opportunity to be far more innovative than we've ever been. And I have never been so proud to stand with my colleagues in the House, in the Senate, the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, and all of my colleagues that have stood firm. And they listened to the cries of people all summer long that demanded that we do something different, that we actually reimagine a public safety system that works for all communities. I'd be remiss if I did not thank organizers like Peter Kobach, like Anthony Walraven, who worked to end cash money bond here locally, who kept stories alive about why it's so important that we take away this concept that being poor is a crime. I'm proud to stand here today, Peoria. You should be proud too. The Illinois General Assembly did something that's absolutely amazing, and it is a model for the country. And that would not have been possible without the steadfast leadership of my good friend, Chairman L.G. Sims. Chairman Sims, please come to the podium.
Give Leader Gordon Booth another round of applause, please. Because she has absolutely earned it. She has earned it for her leadership, not just in the Illinois House of Representatives, but right here in the city of Peoria. But I've also got to thank my seatmate, my good friend, who I consider one of my mentors, Leader Dave Kaler. Please give Leader Kaler a round of applause for his leadership. Let me thank Ms. Cahill and the entire Park District Board President for the warm hospitality here this morning and this afternoon. But also let me thank Governor Pritzker for his leadership, because a commitment to reform requires not just words, but it requires deeds. It requires action. Governor Pritzker has shown the desire to give that and have that action. So Governor Pritzker, thank you for signing the Safety Act. You know, but this moment really belongs to the people in the rafters. This moment is yours. This moment for change is all about you. Recognize that. Recognize that your advocacy, your steadfast commitment to improving the quality of life for individuals, but also lifting up your voices. This moment is yours. Seize this moment. The Safety Act would not be the reality that it is without you coming up and standing up and being courageous enough to say, I matter. Being courageous enough to say that my experience matters. Being courageous enough to say, I am not just a statistic, but I am a person. So thank you for lifting up your voices. Thank you for being the example for us in the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus to make sure we make these kinds of policies reality. Because without you, we could not succeed. You know, the Safety Act is all about making, absolutely. The Safety Act is all about making our communities more safe. It's about making our law enforcement officers, holding them more accountable. But it's also about fairness and equity in our criminal justice system. The Safety Act requires us to move away from the vestiges of the past. to let go of this thinking that somehow the only way to imagine public safety is for us to lead by incarceration. That is false. We've tried the false narrative of the past, the strategies of mass incarceration. Now it's time to reimagine public safety. Now that's not just a slogan. Reimagining public safety is a mindset. It's an action. It requires that we reimagine our thinking. We have to move away from thinking that the only way that we are going to be safe is by having more and more harsh penalties. It requires us to think about things differently. The very definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. The Safety Act reimagines that. It moves us away from that. It moves us towards modernized criminal justice system. It moves us toward a more fair and equitable money bond system. It moves us toward investing in those individuals who have been traumatized. Because individuals who have been traumatized often becomes perpetrators of crime themselves. Now, reform also means that you can support good officers and at the same time support reform. Do not allow that narrative to be created, that by somehow supporting reform, you are somehow being anti-police. That is fear-mongering at its worst. So some have been trying to twist the Safety Act as somehow pro-criminal. That's not what it is. It reimagines what our safety system looks like. It reimagines our ability to be more safe. That's what the Safety Act does. Because the reality is the majority of Illinoisans, they want criminal justice reform. They want our law enforcement officers held accountable. They want their neighbors to have the same access to safety and justice that they have. You know, change can be difficult, but in the words of James Baldwin, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. We certainly cannot continue to do what we have always done and expect that things will somehow change. The Safety Act holds our law enforcement officers accountable. It creates safer communities. It creates a more fair and equitable criminal justice system. But that only happens because of the amazing people in this room and some of the ones who are not. So thank you for lifting up your voices. Thank you for seizing this moment. Thank you for being the example for us and the leadership and the advocacy that we needed in this moment. So thank you so much, and I want to bring to the podium my good friend, my colleague, my partner in this progress effort, Senator Robert Peters.
I'm State Senator Robert Peters of the 13th District, and let me first say this is personal for me. I was forced into adoption due to the war on drugs and my biological mother's addiction. I grew up with an adopted father who was a civil rights lawyer and argued in the Supreme Court against police misconduct. And this is not in my written speech, but I have to say we're in a Park District building. And I was a kid, I was born deaf with a speech impediment, and my adopted mom struggled with addiction and mental health issues. And my sanctuary during that time was the park. And I think of a park as a central component of what it means for us to have safety and justice in this world. And so not only is this personal to me in terms of us passing this bill, but for us standing here today. In 2016, as an organizer with the People's Lobby, I joined a group of organizations to form the End Money Bond Coalition and the Illinois Network for Pretrial Justice. I remember when we were first doing that, a lot of people said, "You think that you can actually get this done?" And in 2023, money bond will be done in the state of Illinois. I want to thank the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, leaders Booth and Kaler, and Governor Pritzker as we make history. And I want to say to everybody up here and everybody in this state, this wouldn't have happened without the organizers, the advocates, and the community members who are sick and tired of a failed status quo. The status quo isn't working. It just isn't. We're ending a system of cash bond that stands at the intersection of race, class, and gender. Cash bond says that if you are poor, you get a lower tier of public safety. If you're poor and black, you get an even lower tier of public safety. And if you're poor, black, and a woman, you get an even lower tier of public safety. The status quo is where someone like Kyle Rittenhouse, backed by his right-wing supporters, could bond out from jail and then go missing for a day. But a working-class black mom, like leaders like Levette Mays, who is struggling to get by, is stuck in jail guilty of being poor. The status quo was rejected by many domestic violence survivor advocacy organizations who played a vital role in ending cash bond and improving public safety for all. The Illinois Coalition Against Domestic Violence said this is criminal justice reform that puts survivor safety first. The failed system of wealth-based detention will be gone in 2023. We are moving towards safety and justice for all, not a few. The bill is a comprehensive improvement on the status quo overall. We've improved victim services and compensation, crime survivor trauma support services, use of standards, moved away from guilt by association policies, and improved police accountability. Whether you live in Peoria or Chicago, Illinois, real safety and justice for all means a good school in every neighborhood, a roof over our heads. It's our family and friends, especially on a birthday or a holiday, or maybe a park when you need to get away. When people think about their safest moments and they close their eyes, they have that special moment. You know, there's something that sits for them. For me, it's when I was struggling as a kid and it was a teacher and a principal that pulled me to the side. We know what that moment is, and our job is to build on top of that moment over and over and over again. It should not just be once. It should be something we try to make forever. Too often our state, I say this as a Chicagoan, is pitted against each other. Chicago versus everyone. This misses the fact that pain, violence, and struggle exists in every corner of Illinois. This misses the fact that no matter the zip code, we have people who just want to feel safe and haven't. We have police shootings all over our state. We have people turning toward addiction or to theft due to poverty and stress all over our state. See, the status quo is failing central and southern Illinois. For 40 years, we have watched as manufacturing has moved out, relentless attacks on our labor unions. We have watched as big ag has eaten up family farms or saddled them with crushing debt. We have watched as our education system struggled through a painful budget impasse. We have watched as a few benefited from tax breaks while the rest of us scraped by. While this has happened, too many people in leadership positions turn towards incarceration and away from the difficult decisions of community investment. We need to move from the prison industrial complex to investing in people, in the real industrial complex that puts food on our table. Safety and justice for all isn't locking up poor people, particularly poor people of color. No, safety and justice is looking at the last 40 years of tough on crime, failed policies, and saying enough is enough. It is investing in our people, our communities, and building grassroots self-determined power. Whether it is Chicago or Springfield, we all deserve better. We deserve dignity and justice for all. We're in the midst of three crises: a public health crisis, an economic crisis, and a crisis with systemic racism, particularly in law enforcement. These crises don't tell us anything new, but highlight long-term failures. Frederick Douglass said, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will." He didn't just say this divorced from the world around him. It was a statement about the role of enslaved people in the emancipation of the Caribbean. He was saying that you must make bold demands, and you must be willing to struggle. And to struggle to win those demands will be a history-making act. Illinois' own Abraham Lincoln said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." People often say this is a statement about unity, but it was actually a very divisive statement, because following those words, He said, "We as a country have a choice, either one that is slave or free." He was calling on people to make a choice, and that we can't avoid or ignore making those tough choices. We are in a similar period of time where we must make tough choices about who we are as a people. So we must make demands, and we must make tough choices. These aren't my words, but the words of leaders before me. Lastly, let us talk about Dr. King. The Dr. King we know today isn't the Dr. King who lived. Dr. King in the 1960s, as he fought for justice, polled at 17%. I repeat, 17%. He was an extremely divisive figure who organized demands and called on us to make a choice about who we are as a people. Today, very smart people who think they know polls would tell politicians like me, "You gotta avoid Dr. King. He just doesn't poll well," is what they would say. But this isn't about polls, but we as a people, as a state, what we need. It is about what is right. It is about history. It is about the world that we are going to build together. Safety and justice for all, no matter the zip code. It's about making the bold demands, making the tough choices, and fighting for what is right. We have moved from Black Lives Matter yard signs to legislative action. With the signing of HB 3653, the Safety Act, we have done that, and we, all of us, should be proud. So we stand on the right side of history, and this isn't the end of history. This is the beginning of our fight to make every community in Illinois whole. Thank you. Next up, my friend, Chairman Slaughter.
Good afternoon. I think it's afternoon. Great to be here. State Representative Justin Slaughter, 27th District, representing the far south side of Chicago, southwest Cook County suburbs, House sponsor of HB 3653, also known as the Safety Act. I want to thank Governor Pritzker and Lieutenant Governor Stratton for advancing criminal justice reform. You and your administration continue to serve our great state with distinction. And of course, it is so great to be here with our host, Madam Speaker of the House, State Representative Jahan Gordon Booth. She is a leader of leaders, the ultimate captain of the House Democrats. When you think about Peoria, Black history, the essence of not only what it means to be a Black caucus member, but to be a stateswoman, a champion of the people. You think of no other than State Representative Jahan Gordon Booth. This state is tremendously blessed to have her as a leader. Please join me in giving her another round of applause. When you think about this past summer, you think about the protests that were happening locally and nationally. This was a call for action, a call for change on social justice issues, not just coming from the Black community, folks of all different backgrounds wanting to bring fairness and equity to a criminal justice system rooted in racism. This movement is about the people. And this law represents, of course, you've heard me say it before, Illinois going from protest to progress. Many of you are hearing about what the bill is not. What the bill is a national model. Governor Pritzker becomes a national leader by signing this bill. This is a transformative, comprehensive, common sense approach to addressing policing and our mass incarceration crisis. Amongst all the back and forth, let's not lose sight of the fact that these reforms needed to happen. It's important to also note it's not just specific and germane to Illinois. This is happening all across the country. Caucuses, mainly the Democratic caucus, coming together to push criminal justice reform. What we've done, collaborating with the executive branch, we put all of these efforts together. We didn't want to slow drip this thing. When you have a leader like Jahan Gordon Booth and you've got Senator Sims leading criminal justice reform, we go big. This is a huge, transformative omnibus bill. And when you think of how this bill was crafted, the various effective dates, I want to lift up the work of Chairman Sims. He was able to carefully craft this law to put down markers, catalysts for change to address our myriad of social justice issues. But it also cultivates a great, outstanding opportunity for ongoing dialogue. Speaker Pro Temp, Jahan Gordon Booth being at the forefront of those ongoing discussions. A lot of things that we will continue to highlight. First state to really legislate ending cash bail. Seventh state in the country to provide for a statewide body cam program, something the Law Enforcement Coalition wants. By 2022, a statewide universal standard for use of force, something else the Law Enforcement Coalition definitely wants. Mr. Governor, still doing the research on this. I think we become one of the first 10 states to end prison gerrymandering. The other big thing, and we've talked about this, when it comes to victim advocates, victim survivors, this bill, this law is tremendously supported by victim rights, victim advocates, and victim survivors. Listen, we're proud of the work that we've done. We're proud that we answered the call for change. We thank everyone for their time, energy, and effort in being involved in putting forth this bill. Together, we will continue to march forward. Together, we will bring justice and public safety to all communities. Together, we go from protest to progress. It's my honor to now bring to the stage State Senator Kaler.
Thank you very much, Representative Slaughter. Governor, thank you for being here, for what you've done to help lead us to this moment. To my colleagues, thank you, especially to the Legislative Black Caucus, to my seatmate, LG Sims. All those phone calls, all those discussions we had, you took the time to really help me understand what an important piece of legislation this was. To my partner, Leader Jahan Gordon Booth, whom I'm privileged to be able to represent this area within the legislature. This is an important time. Change is tough. Change is hard. You know, it wasn't too many years ago that we saw that criminal justice reform took the form of having a sweepstakes of building prisons, right? And we had communities that were vying for these, and so we'd build a prison, and when we built a prison, we'd fill a prison. This is a change from that direction. I want to quote somebody who is probably unusual for me to quote here. It's the former Department of Corrections Director, John Baldwin, former administration. But he had an insight on this that I thought was really inspiring. He talked about prisons as not being places where we punish people, but where we habilitate and rehabilitate. give people opportunities so they come back and become productive citizens within our society. Now, not all people can fit that category, we know that, but many can. And so that becomes our responsibility to make sure that that happens, and this bill helps to do that. I don't see this as being the end of any kind of a process. I see this as being the beginning, or maybe a better term would be a continuation, because in this country we've got a long history, decades and centuries, of the struggle that it's taken to eliminate racism and to promote equality and fairness. I see us as being on that continuum to create a more perfect union, much like what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. so eloquently talked about, it being on the moral arc. I see us as being that. So each generation has to take its place and do its duty to make sure that we continue to perfect this union. I know that I've gotten a lot of emails and phone calls. I know Leader Gordon Booth has as well. People upset, angry about this. And Representative Slaughter, I liked what you said about keeping the dialogue going. We need to reach out, because even though we've passed this piece of legislation, it means now that we have to continue to have those discussions so that we actually make this work. This is nothing but a piece of paper or a law on our books if it doesn't work, and we need it to work. And so I commit to all those who are critics, who are angry with me, that we need to have these conversations. I need to learn from you. You need to learn from me. And I think that in a year from now we can be in a better place, and we can hopefully let the rhetoric die down and actually see some real change taking place in our communities. I have the privilege now of introducing somebody that everybody in Peoria knows. Carl Cannon is an inspiration in what he does, because he walks the talk. Help me welcome Carl Cannon to the podium.
Have to have that ammunition. We understand that ammunition. There are students in the balcony above us who are doing some non-traditional classes courtesy of the Peoria Park District. Don't know if you realize it or not, but learning in a screen is hard. I mean, learning in a screen in a home, you can't get away, is hard, but not impossible. So what you have surrounding you are students who have been learning in and out of that screen. So rule number one for learning Pritzker style, what's rule number one? What's rule number one? What's rule number two? Show them. What's rule number two? And what's rule number three? So we're going to do safe, effective learning, because knowledge is power. Good afternoon. First, I want to thank the Pritzker administration, and in particular, Leader Gordon Booth, for providing through ACEJA, the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority, the ability for the Peoria Park District and Elite Youth Outreach to program through a pandemic. Children were forced all over the country to go to virtual learning formats. For many young people, it was not a successful option. We partnered with Peoria Public Schools and identified a group of youth 5th through 9th grade who were not connecting to their online learning. My team of men and women, they are known as game changers, made home, neighbor, anywhere visits, and spoke to every parent, guardian they could find. All of those parents and guardians who were willing to let us help support their child sign permission slips for their children to do virtual learning with us every day at the Peoria Park District Treewind Pavilion. For that, I have to thank our CEO, my CEO, Miss Emily Cahill, and her amazing administrative team, along with our Park Board President, Mr. Robert Johnson, and I see Board Member Harrent here as well. Thank you. Can we give them a round of applause, please? Game changing. I wonder where else in this country a park district is leading the way for those at the most disadvantaged. We not only monitored the students' online learning, making sure missing assignments were made up, but we also provided them with life skill instructions. Bradley Basketball, men's team, has come on board as mentors to help our students. We also do chess, puzzles, board games, and books for them to help them with their cognitive skills. We also collaborated with friends of ours at Camp Dallas, which allows these students to experience fishing and other outdoor activities inner city children often aren't exposed to. I want to personally thank Mr. Kim Blickenstaff, Mr. Greg Birkland, and Mr. Dwayne and Patty Atherton for allowing us to program totally free. They stand back there, please. Large part of why it's working, it's different. And different means partnering. Standing in the balcony is the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club, Mr. Christian Lee. Thank you. Seated in the balcony is the CEO of Teen Challenge, Mr. Joe Rogers. Thank you. The amazing piece that is the game changers are mostly graduates of the Elite Reentry Program. They are now employees of the Peoria Park District paid through the ASEJA grant. We are preparing to start a new reentry cohort in March, training another group of men and women to become employable and productive community leaders. Our high school elite program will begin in 5 schools in the Peoria area. These students will go through a 2-day-a-week job preparation curriculum. The job is just the carrot. The goal is to help teach them the skills that will make them successful, that will allow them to stand behind me as those who do right now, as leaders in our future. Our teams that work in Peoria Public Schools also support our teachers, will also offer a junior elite component that uses the same concept that we use in high school and our reentry programs. All the programs are scheduled to participate in a joint graduation ceremony in May. May I be allowed to take advantage of this moment to make a formal invite to our governor, Mr. Pritzker, back as our elite graduation speaker. I have your invitation, sir. And the governor is super busy, so for backup, Leader Booth, this is his backup. Please, Governor, you will see something that is truly inspiring. You'll see people that some said couldn't live up to that. But I'm telling you, because there are game changers stand. Individuals who have been there, done that, regret that. I ask you, all of our leadership, who better to look for Boo Boo the Fool than who used to be the fool? Give them a round of applause. And lastly, I'd like to thank a dear friend of Elite who's been there for us, Dr. Karan Velpula. I know he's here somewhere. He's with the U of I School of Medicine, pouring into us. Thank you. God bless. So without further ado, I bring the boss back up, Governor Pritzker.
So, of course, got the leaders and the sponsors of this terrific criminal justice reform bill with us. Yeah, well, before I hand it over to the leader, sorry, I want to take privilege here. I just want to say this bill was not rushed. There were committee meetings, committee hearings after committee hearings after committee hearings, 30 hours of testimony, thousands of phone calls that occurred between the people who are on the committee, the people who are engaged in writing this legislation, and the organizations that represent sheriffs and police chiefs and line officers. And so I want to debunk that myth, the idea that this was somehow done quickly in the dark of night. That just didn't happen. This started last summer. How many months have passed? 7, 8 months now? A lot of work went into this bill. So I'm sorry if I took some of your...
No, you're good.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I just wanted to, no, Governor, whatever you want to say, you be pleased do, say it. But I wanted to speak specifically to your comments about Sheriff Brian Asbell, who I would agree with you that he has been an incredibly reform-minded sheriff, but I think it's also critically important that we kind of set the table and provide context to these assertions that this was rushed. This was not rushed. Leader Sims, Leader Slaughter, Leader Peters worked on hearings for 4 months and 4 days. This was not done in secrecy. This was not done in a backroom deal. This was not done in the dark of night. This was done with law enforcement at the table. This was not rushed by any means. The bills that make up this omnibus package have been introduced and negotiated singularly, literally over the last 10 years in every single General Assembly. And specifically to Sheriff Asbell, myself, as well as Leader Kaler, have had very specific and pointed conversations with Sheriff Asbell. I had a conversation with him yesterday, face to face, and I won't share the context of that conversation, but if you all followed the county board hearing yesterday afternoon, there was a public safety hearing at the county building. He specifically stated at that meeting in the open, so I don't mind sharing with you what he said in the open, that he was actually going to begin to walk back some of the comments that this bill was dangerous. He specifically said that on the record, and that he was going to work with the sponsors of the bill. And as a matter of fact, today, Chairman Sims, Chairman Slaughter have been in communication with Sheriff Asbell to be able to have that open dialogue, because again, as Chairman Slaughter articulated, there are markers that have been placed into this bill to allow time for dialogue so that interpretations are understood. Because listen, we get it. Sometimes people don't like reform. That's the reality. But this is the law of the land, so we will work through these challenges. Sheriff Asbell is a reform-minded sheriff. We expect him to come to the table to negotiate, to get a better understanding so that we can actually do the work of making not just Peoria, but Illinois a more safe and just state. So because this is an omnibus reform, what you'll see is, one, it takes time, right? With any significant reform, it's going to take time. Specifically to the prison gerrymandering, we're going to see the effects of that immediately, right? Because we're going through we're going through the remapping process, right? Where we're beginning to count Illinoisans, and we're beginning to shape and mold not only what congressional districts look like, but what state representative and what state Senate districts look like, you'll see those kinds of changes very quickly. As it relates to the end of cash money bail, that won't be until 2023, so there is time. Again, this is not a rushed process. This has been done in a thoughtful way, so those things that we can move forward on quickly, we will move forward on those things quickly. The things that take more time as it relates to implementation, because again, it's one thing to craft a policy, it's another thing for the state or for local municipalities to have to implement that policy. Please.
Great job, Jahan. Yeah, just want to follow up on that. We all have friends, loved ones, family members that are either aspiring to be in law enforcement, that are in law enforcement, or are retired in law enforcement. We respect them, honor them, admire them. And it's important to understand that they also want most of the lion's share of these reforms. When you talk about how we measure success, and a lot of the effective dates on the bill, again, lifting up Chairman Sims's efforts on crisis intervention. We want to be a state that's a best practice model for supporting co-responder programs, right? What comes along with that is evaluating how those work, what works, what doesn't work. On body cams, again, wanting to provide a statewide program, use of force, which goes live in 2022. The impetus and catalyst for that is also the ability to look at and evaluate what is working. On cash bail, and what we did was codify the Pretrial Fairness Act, which Senator Peters sponsored. Front and center with that is not only ironing out these challenges that we want to have addressed by January of 2023, but it is studying how this is going to work in terms of comprehensively looking at the nature of the offense and these particular situations and circumstances. So that is a big part of why we say this is a national model, is because it's not just about policy, it is also about evaluating what is going to work.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the. Yes. So there is, and let me just start. I want to let Chairman Sims, I just want to say, though, I actually read the story about Washburn making those statements, and look, they were in process already, to be clear. So I know that people want to pile in, that this is a reason. But the fact is that we want to make it work for all police departments across the state. I'm going to let the chairman talk to you about how we're going to help do that.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Governor. And yeah, as the governor mentioned, that the police department was already in the process, but that's the reason why we have the extended implementation date. So the full implementation date for the requirement for body cameras isn't until 2025, and that's for the smallest of departments. But even beyond that, Governor is also to be commended for his fiscal year 2022 budget recommendation that has $3.4 million in it for body cameras. Right now, at last I checked, which was a week ago, I have not checked recently, there was $2.166 million in the body-worn camera grant fund, which currently exists in statute. So that money is already there. In addition, there is an incentive for municipalities who want to go and implement and deploy body cameras right now. So we built that into the law, that there is an incentive for departments who want to deploy body cameras. They can start that process right now, and they have priority funding. They have priority access to the funds that are already there. So there's $2.1 million that's in the body-worn camera grant fund right now. There's $3.4 million in the 2022 budget recommendation, and there are continued discussions about what additional funds will be necessary. But there is absolutely a commitment to ensuring that resources are there for municipalities.
We have time for one more question. Can we do over here?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I was wondering, can you offer a comment on Edward Guerra Kodak stepping down as assessor for Michael Madigan in the 22nd district? Can you offer any comment on that?
I really don't know much about what the reasoning was. Frankly, I've been traveling today, and I only heard it very recently that he's stepping back after being sworn in, so I don't really have any comment. Sorry.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.